something in our Torah and the minutiae. Even though many would ride during the Sabbath in their cars, yet when Rosh Hashanah comes, when Yom Kippur, the same who will be going into their cars would feel a little awkward getting into a car and riding to Shul on Yom Kippur. Some, not all, would even feel awkward about doing this on Rosh Hashanah. Why? Because on that day they feel the riding itself is part of the essence of the mitzvah of the Rosh Hashanah and of Yom Kippur. And therefore you can understand why the rabbi, cantor, or anyone else who feels this way should feel that same essence in the riding even on the Sabbath. I wish tonight to give you a few more pertinent examples of what the conservative movement feels this modern day and age means in reference to our law, our halacha. Not too long ago, perhaps even as early as just 50 years ago, men were considered the masters of the world. They were considered the destinators of everything that exists, the makers of the home and of history, while women were considered the makers of kigel and of chong and of a good chicken and of children. The men were to make the living, as the women were to wash the kitchen floors. Indeed, we find this to be true even today in Europe. The Italian woman is not respected or acted to as does the American woman in reference to their husbands or even their gentlemen. Now the truth is that women were regarded second class in social life, in communal life, as well as in religious life. And it stands to reason this is the way it was. Therefore, the man is the one to be religious, the man is the one to keep the mitzvahs, the man is the one to be respected even in religion, while the women can come second-hand. If they don't come to synagogue at all, it's unimportant. More so, it's the greatest sin one can do if he tries to teach a woman a little Hebrew or a little understanding about his religion. This is what it was felt before. The woman's place is in their home, not in their faith. But as women became women, and as our modern times changed, women take part in social and economic and in cultural activities, and at the same token must take part in religious activities. They are no different, and our Torah never said they were different. We have proof that there were women of scholar long ago. Otherwise, there would have never been a Deborah who was a prophetess, or a Sarah in our Torah, or a story of Rebecca and Leah would not have been mentioned, or even the story of Dinah. Now, in this modern day and age, a woman would like to pray with her husband as a family group, as a family unit. Well, there are three things that could be done. To the Orthodox movement, this is still absolutely wrong. Not because they disrespect women, God forbid, but because if a woman may be sitting next to a man, he will not have his mind on prayer, but rather on the beautiful woman he's sitting next to. If it be his wife, I can't see how. Nevertheless, we do know, and I know this for a fact, that if a woman is separated in a mechitza somewhere else with a large curtain, the man would have more of a tendency to want to look up and see what's up there. I've done it. I know they all do. What does the conservative movement say? The conservative movement says, on the contrary, if a woman is sitting next to her husband, or a daughter next to the father, or men and women sitting together and they are all praying, their mind would not be on what kind of dress she is wearing, which would be more readily when women are sitting together, but on what am I saying in my prayer? Let us come to synagogue together and leave together. We respect each other, you for what you are and I for what I am. We howl and we make remarks. That is the woman of the house who is today to bring up the Jewish home. And so why don't we make the woman of the house part of the same woman of the synagogue? She is no less than we. In fact, she may be more than we. Why not take a woman and teach her and let her know that she belongs? And therefore there is absolutely nothing wrong with having a woman step up to the pulpit and sing a prayer at the end of services, as we do with our youngsters on Sabbath morning. and there's nothing wrong with a man and woman sitting together. This, indeed, is the modern time and the modern age and the modern society. The essence of prayer and religion is here. The minutiae, that woman must be separated, we take this away, it doesn't exist. Nevertheless, my friends, there are many conservative synagogues that still do not believe in this part of modernization and still have women sitting separately and men. And they are conservative synagogues, conservative rabbis graduated from the seminary. We have another example, that it was once a time that the cantor faced the ark all the time and prayed to God, and we sitting must only see his back and also pray. But the time has come that man would like to hear the cantor, as he would the rabbi, pray with him, see his face and notice in his face the tears of his prayers. And so let have the cantor face the audience. Is it spoiling something of our prayer? Is it changing something? Absolutely not. In the daily prayer, where all you do is only daven, if one is religious and feels he wants to face the ark in his davening, let him do so. If he does want to face the people, let him do so. But when there is a service for all, let the cantor face the people, and let the people know they are praying. There was once a time that all Jews on Shabbos came to shul. But again, as times have changed, people work on the Sabbath. Is this an excuse to close the synagogues for those who must work on the Sabbath and see them only on 3 days a year? Or can we perhaps do something about it? Let us open up the doors on Friday evening, for Shabbos is also on Friday evening, and make a late Friday evening service, late, so they eat their supper, and then they know they come to shul. Is this such a terrible crime? Are we taking away from the essence of the Shabbos? Are we taking away from the holiness of the day, or in fact adding some holiness to those who would otherwise never have had it? And so the conservative movement started a late Friday evening service. And we find many Orthodox synagogues now doing that as well. Walk to shul Friday night, and we'll daven on Friday night too. There was once a time that everybody prayed in Hebrew. They did not understand what they're praying. The Catholics did it to the very day. Is it wrong when we have a law in our Torah that prayer is heard by God in every language, even if you speak the language of the Watutsi tribe? He hears your prayer. And even then, can't we also pray in English? And so the conservative movement says prayer should be said in English, and let the congregants read it with you in English. Read it responsibly, emphasize, and let them understand that they are praying, not that I or the cantor is babbling for them, but they too have an understanding of what they are saying. In fact, if you feel this is wrong, my friends, we know that the Sephardim, the Spanish-speaking people, in year 1492 and in year 1392, when Maimonides, who was ultra-Orthodox, was living, had prayers in Spanish, which was the language of that country at that time. We also know that we have a law of grace after meals. When I eat, I am to say a blessing. The Orthodox say, if you want English to know this is a grace said after meals, than to say the whole thing in Hebrew and have 3/4 of the people sitting with their hands folded. And so we say the grace after meals, we have it. But in all this, my friends, and there could be hundreds of more examples, the example of marriage itself, how we marry somebody, and why, and how we say it is perfectly all right for the bride to give a ring to the groom if it's the modern time to do so. Is it wrong for her to show her love to him as he to make a vow to her? There's nothing wrong with that. But we certainly would not be permissive as to say tradition has nothing. This we do not say. That our Torah or halacha or the tradition of old is completely to be thrown out. We do not say that at all. This is the difference between understanding the essence of law and its incidentals. The conservative movement does not move from the essentials, the Jewish law, but but is prepared to modify the incidentals to make this essential more meaningful instead of being thrown out completely. Now, what is incidental and what is essential? This we have a halacha committee to tell us. And at the same token, my friends, there are many cases that it depends on the very feeling of the rabbi itself. What he should feel is incidental, and what he may feel is essential. Even in the halacha committee, there is a minority and a majority opinion. The conservative movement, therefore, cannot come out with a Shulchan Aruch. I've heard many people ask the question, why doesn't the conservative movement come out with a book, a code of Jewish law according to their laws, and say, law this and this, and you may do this and this, you may not do that and this, according to the conservative movement, as the Orthodox have theirs. My friends, they cannot come out with such a book. They cannot come out with the pages and with the laws stating point by point what each law is. Because when you do this, you stop movement and change, and you become rigid. This is exactly the mistake that was made 300 years ago, when the Shulchan Aruch was written then. When a code of law was written then, law 1, 2, 3, 4, and was adopted by the Jews of the time, who are Orthodox, and still is being used today, 300 years later. It stopped Judaism from living with our modern time and changing the incidentals with the time we live in. To many, in the Orthodox position, for instance, the Shulchan Aruch of 300 years back is the law of today, and not one minutia is to be changed. If 300 years ago it was a custom to wash your hands when you wake up in the morning right at the bedside, because the evil spirit that is in you over the night goes into your nails, and you must wash your hands to get the evil spirit out of your nails, this is the law even today. I wonder if any of you have ever heard the word negovasa, to wash your hands. If this law is written 300 years ago, that you must tie your right shoe first before your left shoe, or that you must spit 3 times, that the ayin hara should not get you, that the evil eye should not hit you, or whatever else, this same law applies to today. Do not mistake me, there are a lot of laws in that Shulchan Aruch which apply even to the conservative movement, because this is essential laws. Even though we may find in quite a lot of areas where the Orthodox movement are now starting to see that there are a lot of essentials that must be changed, that are not really essentials. For instance, and they also admit that the Shulchan Aruch is now a little too rigid. We do find a lot of Orthodox synagogues who today have such a thing as a bas mitzvah, which is a conservative innovation. Who has ever heard of a bas mitzvah in an Orthodox synagogue? But they do it today. They also have prayers in English so that one can understand. Their sermons are now in English. I understand just about 10 years ago or 15 years ago, it is unheard of an Orthodox synagogue having a sermon the rabbi preach in English, but in Yiddish. But today they have the sermons in English because they find that this must be done. Even though the Shulchan Aruch says prayer should be said in the language of Hebrew, and when you speak the Mama Lashon. Well, the Mama Lashon of Yiddish is an innovation of a new language as well. When the Rambam, and if you feel that this is only the Shulchan Aruch of 300 years ago that wrote this book of law, and we complain about him, when the Rambam wrote the first code of law 800 years ago, he was the first one to write a book saying law number 1, law number 2, and wrote laws for us. There was a clamor even then that he is putting law down, and man cannot move law with the time. They told him he should not do it, because then as times will change, law must change. Now let me give you this perfect example to our own United States to understand the difference between a book of written laws and between a book of essentials where law could be changed. I would like to ask you, how would the United States look today if the Constitution would not be flexible to the times? If changing incidentals as long as the Spirit was there was impossible, how would it look today? But what is incidental and what is the Spirit does depend on the Supreme Court of the day we live in, and that's what makes this Constitution of the United States so flexible. We have a Supreme Court. They tell us what is essential, what is called democracy. And with that, we also have a Constitution that we could change. Perhaps this is not democratic today, perhaps it is democratic today. Prayer in those schools is a perfect example of a change of the Supreme Court. In fact, the entire integration is an example of a change of a Supreme Court from then to now. And now the same holds true, that what is to be considered the minutiae and the Spirit cannot always be handed down to us on a silver platter by an anonymous decision, and therefore must be left to the rabbi. And in some conservative synagogues, you may find goings-on that to another conservative synagogue, this is not to be done. Now, this rabbi has considered this to be incidental and this to be important, the other rabbi not. To give you an example, in some conservative synagogues, an organ plays, and it's called conservative synagogue, and there's an organ playing. To that rabbi, he considers the organ only incidental, and it could go on the Shabbos. To another rabbi, the organ is considered actually desecrating the Sabbath. In some synagogues, you may find, even conservative synagogues, as I said before, he wants men to sit separately and women to sit separately, and the cantor to face only the ark. And I'll give you the name of the synagogue. In Baltimore, there's a synagogue called the Beth Tfilah. Rabbi Rosenblatt, who has just received his doctor's degree from the seminary, an honorary doctor's degree, meaning that he was quite one of the upper people in the seminary. However, he had to be in the minority group. In his synagogue, men and women must sit separately. The cantor must face the ark. They daven only in the Hebrew, but it's a conservative. To him, he considers all this essential. So you see, we cannot come along and say all rabbis must do this and all rabbis must do that, except in cases where there is an essential problem, like the Sabbath, and a decree is put out, and even then, only the majority. It is as if each state has its particular law, but the spirit of the Constitution must be there. Only in a few cases would the national government describe the law to all the states, and also that may be true to the Conservative Law Committee. Only in a few cases will it come out with a certain law that should be changed because its question needs change to uphold the spirit. And in many cases will they say we have no exact ruling because it must depend upon you, the rabbi, or the feeling of what you see the congregation feels to be essential and feels not to be essential. Therefore, if too many prayers are said in Hebrew, perhaps the congregation feels some should be said in English, and will be changed in some in English. But this we must always remember. We must take all the changes with an understanding and with a discretion that a spirit must be first and foremost in all our decisions.
We are now entering a season of universal celebrating, a season of the new year 1967. And we are taught by the scholars of old
that the new year we count by in the land we live should be considered as a beginning of a year. Beginning for man to research his past and resolve for the future. In fact, say our rabbis, is this not true every day of man's life? To see what the day has passed and what the day shall bring. Every month we have a prayer again, asking of God, Chaim Shel Barach, life of blessing and of peace and of good and of sustenance. And certainly again, at the beginning of a year. My friends, we have just been through a holiday of religious rededication, a holiday of Hanukkah. It was just over this Wednesday evening on Thursday. Indeed, so strong a lesson have we to learn from the holiday past of our faith to the holiday coming for the Christian faith. The Talmud records a dispute in law on how the Hanukkah candles should be lit. The dispute is among great pillars of religion, not between two simple men in the street, between two scholarly schools. The dispute is between Hillel and the school of Shammai. A philosophical dispute, so to speak, between the universities of Harvard and the University of Columbia. Rabbi Shammai and his followers and his school claimed the lighting of the candles should be thusly: that on the first night all 8 candles are to be lit, all 8, and on the second night 7, and on the third night 6, and on the fourth 5, and so on, until on the last day of Hanukkah only 1 candle is to be lit. Hillel and his philosophy and his school argued just the contrary, that on the first night only 1 candle is to be lit, and on the second night 2, and on the third 3, and so on, until on the last night of Hanukkah, all 8 candles, all of them, are lit. Of course, you know, according to whom the law is, it is, of course, according to Hillel, where we light 1 and add every night. But, my friends, their difference of opinion was not merely how one is to light a candle. It was a difference in philosophical outlook of life, of what and in what trend the Jew ought to philosophize his existence, and for that matter, in what way and in what trend shall all men philosophize their existence. And this trend of thought is so significant today in the world of turmoil, so important today in the years of rock and roll and Watusi and every other dance that they have. Shammai claimed that the glory of Judaism was in the past. The great days of our faith have passed, and one must continue to live, indeed to live, but with faith based upon the memory of the past. Begin to light with 8 candles, and as the days go by, its glory becomes less and less until 1 is left. Hillel, however, claimed just the opposite. Though the past was great, and indeed it was, many of us boast of our grandfathers having long beards, and of coming to synagogue every day, and of being righteous and honest. We boast of our past so strongly, and we show pictures on our walls of our great ancestors, who were pious men, who did not know what it means to turn from any spiritual religious upbringing. The past was great, of course, yet so will our future be great. Indeed, says Hillel, remember the past, glorify its spiritual greatness, but do not be content with memories. This is his lesson. I am reminded of a story of a yeshiva bacher, a student in school, in rabbinical school. And this yeshiva bacher, the rabbi, came over to him and saw him sitting, and he's studying a page. And he bends over and sees what he's studying. Shnayim Mosim Bitalis. Wonderful. A week later, the rabbi comes by again. He sees the same student sitting and studying. And he bends over again, and he finds the student is on the very same page. And he asks him, haven't you been on this page a week ago? And the student said, yes. Well, don't you go any further? And the student looked up to the rabbi and said, if it is good for him here, why should I go any further? But this is the words of a silly, childish student. Judaism is a living faith, dynamic in its principles, moving and growing with history. Indeed, this is the concept of the conservative movement. Grow with your faith, grow with your religion, grow with the modern people you live with. Start with 1 candle, says Hillel, and as the days go by, add more light, until the future sees growth in the flame of spiritual endeavors. The future can still be greater than the past. Does not a parent, even one who has every station in life he may wish, wealth and happiness and prestige and a home, does not that same parent hope and wish for something better even for their children? And so they always wish for better. The Medrash states that the entire episode of Hanukkah is an epitome to the story of the Jew. Our history is a fantastic legend of a single day supply of oil lasting 8 days, of a flaming bush that is not consumed, of a national life that should have gone out long ago, but it still burns on. And the reason for this, my friends, is because we judge and we philosophize as Hillel. Tomorrow will be better. Our Jewish expressions have it every day. Es wird schon sein gut, es nicht heim morgen. Gott wird schon helfen, God will help. Tomorrow is another day. It was evening, begins our Bible, in darkness, and then it was day, then comes light. There is a story told of two great men, and these two great men once met a poor lonely Jew. I said, I want to ask you a question. What is it? And he said, tell me, Jew, do people grow from down up or from up down? And the Jew looked at him and says, I will tell you the answer. They grow from down up. He said, how do you know? He says, come and I will show you. And they went around the corner, and there they saw a parade. And he said, now look at the feet of all these soldiers parading. All the feet are even, but look at their heads. One is taller, one is smaller. It's a sign that they grow from the down up, otherwise the heads would be even. This indeed is a perfect example of man's growth. We must not start from the head, from the past, and then go down, but from the feet, and grow up. This philosophy must exist not only in the spiritual life of man, but in the daily pursuits of life in our physical being. A new year is coming before us, my friends. It shall be better than the year gone by, and with this philosophy you must continue living. The late president in his inaugural address said just the words of Hillel, and I quote what he said: the past is past. We must dream of the future that lies ahead of us, and it can be greater. And I quote the President of the United States. In this lesson of Hanukkah, learn how to resolve the life beginning in the year ahead. The good old days of this year, 1967, will become the good old days of 1968. They can still be great before you. Our Talmud says, life is like a dream. Kechalom Yaakov, as a dream of Jacob. Now, what does this mean as the dream of Jacob? We all recall the story that when Jacob was running from his brother Esau, he lay down to take a little nap, put some rocks behind his head, and he fell asleep. And there he had a dream. And if you recall the dream was that angels from the earth were going up to heaven, and angels from heaven were coming down to earth. And immediately our rabbis asked, why does it begin the angels from earth going up to heaven? Should not angels from heaven come down to earth first, and then the angels go return? And they answer, this is to teach us how life should be. It is symbolic of ideals and visions of man. Kechalom Yaakov, live as the dream of Jacob. In our dreams, in our visions, in our hopes, in our noble and our everyday pursuits, if they are noble enough, lofty enough, daring enough, then they rise above heavenward and return to us hallowed and blessed to help us translate them into earthly life and human experiences. The future is brighter and lighter. A new simcha, a new joy, a new dream, a new hope come about. Every day, give your life a little more light, and your days shall indeed be blessed.
We have previously spoken of changes or modifications are to be made in Jewish law of our Torah and still holding the essence of its law. We must ask the question, do we find that indeed such changes and modifications have been taking place throughout history of the Jew from the moment the Torah was given? Or is this a modern innovation? The answer to this, my friends, is that it has indeed been taking place even in Talmudic rabbinic times. And we find such examples. We know of a story that the Talmud relates where there was an argument between two rabbis. And one indeed asked, let the heavens above bring proof that he is right. Let a voice come, let the walls bend, and so on as the story goes on. Yet the other rabbi said that all the proof from the miracles of heaven above, yet Torah lo bashomayim hi. The Torah now is not in heaven, but in the hands of man to interpret and to find what he feels is the true meaning of its laws. We know indeed that the rabbis say, Kol ma shetikon rabbanon ke'eino haisatikon. Everything that the rabbis have proclaimed or modified to be law, even if an addition of a law, is as it was actually written in the Torah handed to the Jews by Moses at Mount Sinai. But let me give you one particular example of a law in our Torah that was actually taken out through a legal procedure in rabbinic times. Our Torah states that every 7 years, all laws that were made should be nullified. And so the Jew in rabbinic times, when they turned from an agricultural society to perhaps a more industrialized society, found that when the 7th year came about, no one would lend anybody money for fear that the 7th year is upon them and they would be not obligated anymore by law of our Torah to return the money.
As Yisro, most of our prayers may be called congregational prayers. That is, we pray not to ourselves. The words are not in the selfish I, but in the unselfish plural noun of we, the individual included. But the prayer emphasizes the congregation. As an example, in the Amidah, we begin, the Lord our God, God of Abraham, God of Isaac and Jacob, revered God, and so on, but ours. And during the repetition of the cantor, most of the prayers are also found in the I. The last prayer said aloud is, may Lord bless his people with peace. Again, plural. Even the prayer of Jeremiah, for any out of Shem v'nei Raphael, Hosheinu v'nei Yoshea, help me, O Lord, and I shall be helped. Heal me, O Lord, and I shall be healed. Is changed in the Amidah to read, heal us, O Lord, and we shall be healed. Save us, O Lord, and we shall be saved.
That on Yom Kippur, when we say our peace and we pronounce all the sins we do, if you ever read these sins, you would realize there are many there that you not only do, but you've never even heard of, but don't even understand what it means. So why do we have to still say we have sinned? And the answer is we still remind ourselves of the sins to ask God to forgive all of us, even those that may have sinned those particular kind where we have not. But my friends, there is one prayer which is really part of the Amidah, yet never said aloud or said by repetition by a cantor, because this particular prayer is not a congregational prayer, but an individual prayer. It is not we, but a personal prayer of I. And that prayer is at the very end of our Amidah. Elohai v'tzor sholi ve'ho u'sefosai medale levo. My God, speaking. Watch my tongue from speaking evil, and my lips from speaking God. And to those who slander me, let me give no heed. Quite an individual, personal prayer is this, and it is part of our Amidah. Now, in analyzing this prayer, we may certainly learn quite a lot. Generally speaking and abstractly speaking, this calls out to us so clearly the fact that individual prayer has about ceased to exist in a sense. We have forgotten how to pray unless the prayer is organized for us. In our approach to God, is it not true that we have become like children who have to be spoon-fed because the words are put into our mouths, otherwise we are starved spiritually? This, my friends, is wrong. We should, each one of us, have a personal bakosh, as we say in Hebrew, an eigene gebet, as it is the words in Jewish. Each one of us should have our own little personal prayer and meaning where we say a prayer. There's a story told of a chassid, a very pious man, was once walking in the fields, and there he met a shepherd. And both of them decided they want to pray to God. And the chassid opens up his prayer book and he starts reading and praying and all words. And the shepherd just looks at him, he didn't understand one word of Hebrew, even how to read it. And he said, God, I love you so much. If I had a herd of cattle, and if you had a herd of cattle, I will tend your cattle free of charge. And the story is told that a voice from heaven came out and said, the prayer of this shepherd is what I call prayer. It was within. The all-merciful desires only the heart. And when you come to a word, and I want the congregation to understand this, when you come to a word or a phrase that inspires you personally as you are reading any prayer, right here, as I am reading it and as you are reading it in the Amidah, stop there at that word or phrase. Think about it. Be inspired by that and forget everything else. This is more important than to say words and end it, or not to end it, or see how much my neighbor got finished and how much I can finish. Your prayer is more important to understand. This is prayer. Use your own words, it must be, when you are inspired, or use your own words in the middle of the Shemona Esrei, in the middle of Shema Yisrael, in the middle of any prayer that we read here, and use your own thoughts. But don't have the thinking in your mind that what I read, this is prayer, what I think is not. That is not so. Now, my friends, let us analyze this individual prayer. The author took this prayer right from the very words of King David. King David writes, and we have this in our siddur, page 67 indeed. Come, ye children, hearken unto me. I will teach you the fear of the Lord. Who is the man that loves life and desires long life filled with joy? Keep your tongue from evil and your lips from speaking guile. Depart from evil and do good. Seek peace and pursue it. Very words of the Psalms of David. Yet the author thought this so important that he put this into the Amidah, but not as a plural prayer. He didn't say, God, our tongue from evil, or as King David puts it, God, your tongue from evil.
personal prayer. I am harmed. I will be hurt if I speak idle, my tongue speaks evil of others. I will be hurt, and I will cause the hurt. If there is ever a noxic weed, a toxic sickness, a growing evil in society, my friends, it is the poison of lashon hara, the poison of the evil tongue, the poison of gossip, the growth of slander, of tale-bearing, of tattletale, of backbiting, of defamation. It is a hard weed to get rid of. I am guilty, you are guilty, everyone. And we are guilty of this practically every day, more than once a day. There was a great scholar, wrote a book and he called it Prophet's Hide. And it was known by the Prophet's Hide. And the book is merely an explanation of how gossip can kill man and how we are forbidden in our Torah to slander and to gossip, to defame character, and to tale-bear on others. And he calls this the Prophet's Hide because these are the words of King David. Me, Elisha, Prophet's Hide, who is the man who wants life? God, your tongue from evil, and your lips from speaking God. We all know the story that Moses, when he came to Pharaoh, took a stick and threw it before Pharaoh and turned into a snake. You recall the miracle that God said, this will be a sign I sent you. Your stick will turn into a snake. And the Medrash immediately, why into a snake? And the Medrash answers and says, it was to teach Moses a lesson, not Pharaoh. When God first told Moses, go to Pharaoh and tell him to let my people go, Moses said to God, how can I? They will not listen to me. And so God said to Moses, how dare you speak slander against your people Israel? When you speak slander, you are as a snake who does nothing but enjoys to bite. For the taste of everything the snake will have will be as dust. And that's why he gave him the sign that the stick deserves to become a snake. In our 10 Commandments that we read just tomorrow, our Torah tells us and our rabbis explain that to speak gossip and slander and defamation of character, this is part of thou shalt not murder. Shvichas damim. It is called spilling of blood when you speak just gossip against God. Indeed, my friends, this evil of society deserves an individual prayer. And not only once, but 3 times a day. Not a general congregation prayer. So important is this, that it must be your personal desire to ask God for help, to help me to guard my tongue from evil. There's a story of a great scholar, a great sage, called the Hershel. And this Hershel, the story is told. When he went to heaven, the doors opened up for him, and he went directly and sat on the throne of heaven. And they asked him, why do you deserve this? And he said, because I changed a few words of the Torah. But what did you change? And he said, our Torah says, love thy neighbor as thyself. I changed it to love my neighbor as myself. I made it personal. I made it part. This is exactly what Mar the son of Rabbi, the author of this prayer, did. From King David's expression, he wrote, guard my tongue from evil. We read tonight, life and death is in the hands of the tongue. I think that society and history will bear me out, that the worst weapon created, more deadlier than the gun, is the tongue. It can bring death slowly and slowly. It can ruin a business, it can ruin character. The tongue can defame a person's entire hopes and dreams. It is worse than the gun. The story is told of a Hasidic Rebbe. And the Rebbe once called his students together and said, the worst sin is to speak slander against somebody. True or false, keep it to yourself and feel better than to speak slander and gossip. Because if you say something about your friend, or if you say something against your neighbor, maybe one day Satan will call you to be a witness to it. And how would you feel to become Satan's assistant? This is exactly what that does. Yet, my friends, there is yet another lesson in the same prayer. For the prayer teaches us what of the man who has been slandered. And the best thing to do is to ignore it. And to those who slander me, let me give no heed. May my soul be forgiving and humble to all. And it needs a strong back, a man of lots of inner strength to ignore slander upon himself. So we say, pray to God, let me give no heed, and it's a prayer. As the old Latin expression, they come where they come, they can't. They say, what do they say? Let them say. Only in our prayers is the thought of the victim combined with the thought of the transgressor. Indeed, my friends, if anything needed personalization, a personalized prayer, both for himself not to do, and strength to endure if you are the victim, this evil needs it. And again may I add, when you pray, make it personal. Take the phrase of the word that inspires you. Don't worry about going any further. And if you make a little bit more warmth to yourself and give yourself over your prayer, then you are indeed praying before God. And in the words of the poet, and I've said this before, but I wish to repeat it. God said to mankind, your task is to build a better world. And I asked him how. I am so small, there is nothing I can do. But God's wisdom answered to man, yes, you can. Just build a better you. Since we read the Ten Commandments, I wish for a moment just to speak to the children who are with us. There's a beautiful little story of a rabbi who came to visit a town. And when he came to this little village, he went to sleep that night because he was tired. And that night he had a dream. And he dreamt he was going to paradise, to heaven. And angels came before him and they said, here is a great big beautiful throne that you deserve to sit on in paradise. And the rabbi asked the angels, tell me, who will be my neighbor? Who will sit next to me? And the angel said, oh, he is a man who he's nothing more than a smith that shoes horses, and his name is Lunas. And the rabbi thought, what? An unlearned man, a man who is ignorant, who did not know prayers or study, he's going to sit next to me? And the angel says, yes, it is written for him. And he asked the angels, why? And at that moment he woke up and never got the answer. But when he woke up, he asked some of the people in that village that he was visiting, is there a man named Lunas living in this village? And they said, yes, he's a blacksmith, an ignorant man. He's living in the corner of that village. And the rabbi said, please fetch him for me. And so some of the people went to this Lunas to call him. 15 minutes later, they came back to the rabbi, and they said, Lunas refuses to come. He cannot come. The rabbi never heard of this. And so he said, in that case, I will go to him. And he picked himself up and he came to Lunas. And there he found the Lunas, and he had a sick father and a sick mother. And he was tending them. And he said to the rabbi, please excuse me for not coming to you when you called. But for the last 10 years, my father and mother were sick. And all day, since nobody else can, I tend them and I take care of them. And at night, for a few hours, I walk into my smith and I take care of the horses to shoe them. And when the rabbi heard this, he said, certainly, only this man Lunas, who respects a father and mother so much, that everything else in the world is secondary. He deserves to sit next to a great sage in heaven. My dear children, the very day that Rabbi preached to his congregation on the theme, and he said how great is the mitzvah of honoring one's parents. He who honors his father and his mother will surely have a place in paradise. Respect for parents is the foundation of the family. The family is the foundation of society. And according to the Talmud, God says, when a man honors his father and mother, I dwell in his house. Wherever there is respect for parents, there is respect for authority. And when there is respect for authority, a nation is strong, and there's respect for wisdom as well.
Shabbos Parshas Mishpatim.
With the word Ve'ela HaMishpatim, and these are the laws Asher Samtu Epnehem that you should put before them. With these words is the start of our legalistic Judaism to come forth. Until now, the distinguishing mark of the Hebrew, that is the Hebrew until Moses gave us the laws in our Torah, was one, that these people believed in one unseen universal God. Number two, that they set aside a specific time every day to pray to this God. And number three, they had a day they called Shabbat, or a day they called the Sabbath, as a day of rest from work, which was unheard of then, but only this sect of people did it. And number four, they circumcised their male children at 8 days. And number five, they had a philosophy of showing justice and kindness and kinship to all people. This was the entire Hebrew. This was their religion. This was the religion of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, of the 12 tribes until they left the land of Egypt. He had no other observance, no other tradition, no law, no other holidays, no customs, and no other worship to show this unseen God. Moses gave us the kind of religion and worship that we have today. In other words, Abraham was the founder and Moses the organizer. Now, my friends, the basic and fundamental concept of Judaism is given within the Ten Commandments. We can find everything there within the words if we look and read between the lines and between those words. And one Friday evening, a little while ago, I indeed gave a sermon to show how our Talmud tries to take every single law and precept we have and put it within the words of the Ten Commandments. Tonight, when we begin to read of this Jewish ritual, I feel it appropriate to explain what is the conservative movement. What does conservative Judaism stand for? And how do we feel about tradition and change, about customs and ceremonies? You know, my friends, we find many people that say that conservative Judaism is nicht kalt, nicht warm, not cold and not warm, just a middle path. Well, it seems to be a little wrong when we say that, and yet there is some truth as well. Certainly, conservative Judaism is a movement of change. Change with the times and to the times we live in, and change for the better. But where do we get this right to change? Do we get it from out of our heads, or do we disregard simply because we don't like it or consider it foolish today, and so we say, well, let's forget about it? No, my friends. This right to change, to roll with the waves, so to speak, this concept is right within our Bible and from the very Ten Commandments, the beginning of our legalistic law.
God begins the Ten Commandments rather strangely. He begins with the words, I am the Lord thy God. This is something they all knew already. And he goes on, that brought you out of the land of Egypt. And therefore thou shalt have no other gods before me, and so on and so forth. And the question our Medrash asks immediately, why does God begin to convince us of his oneness by emphasizing he is the God that freed us from slavery? He could have said, I am the God, your God, your one and only God. Look around you and see the way I split the sea, and the way mountains roared, and the way Egypt feared, and the way I poured 12 and so many plagues upon them. Why? Because I freed you from Egypt, freedom to slavery. In fact, we find in many, many other instances, in the Kiddush that we say, in the blessings before God, that he freed us from Egypt. And we keep reminding ourselves that this is our God because he made us free from that land of slavery. But my friends, the Medrash answers so beautifully and yet so true. God begins his commandments as a God of freedom to point out this very concept that he is a God of freedom. Just as freedom in the physical sense is the ultimate goal of mankind. And God can only be worshipped in a land of freedom. That's why the Torah was not given in Egypt. And that's why Moses said, free my people just to worship God. In a place of slavery, God cannot truly be worshipped. And we know, as we sang last week, when the Jews were exiled to Babylon, they asked him by the rivers of Babylon, which is today Iraq, sing a song, and they said, how can we sing of the songs of Zion in a land as we go to slavery? And just like one cannot worship truly under slavery but freedom, so can law and ethical teachings and justice be true worship to God. Only it is the true inner freedom to interpret, to see that I am the Lord your God, and all its implications and laws of justice may conform to the day and the age we live in. Every one of us have a different concept to what we mean by God, and every one of us has that freedom of that concept. This itself, my friends, is the very first commandment. It is true about all government law. Law cannot be stagnant. If it stays in one place, it rots, it becomes half-foiled, and it doesn't move. As situations change, as customs of a land change, so must its laws, whether it be the American statutes, the American laws, or whether it be religious laws. And I think the Catholic Church is starting to find that out, something we Jews knew long ago. The Jew was not free physically to become slaves spiritually. We have an entire Talmud for interpretation of law and changes of concept, as is the freedom of the intellect and the freedom of the very commandments of our Torah. Omar Rab Simloi said, the majority of commandments are given for man. Let man make it applicable. It's rather an interesting story in our Talmud. Two rabbis, Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yoshua, started to argue about a particular law. And Rabbi Eliezer said the law is so-and-so. Rabbi Yoshua said, no, the law is so-and-so. It looks like whenever two Jews get together, there are three different opinions. And Rabbi Eliezer said, I am so certain that the law is like me, that let the clouds come about and let thunder and lightning be a sign from God that the law is like me. And at that very moment, clouds came and thunder and lightning. And let's see, the law is like me. Now that Yeshua says, thunder and lightning is no sign for me that you are correct. And Rabbi Eliezer said, in that case, let the earth start to quiver to show that the law is like me. And the earth started to quiver, an earthquake. And Rabbi Yeshua said, I do not accept this as a sign. And then Rabbi Eliezer said that this particular building, let the wall just lean over to the left,
to show that I am right, and the wall leaned over to the left. And again, Rabbi Yeshua said, I do not accept this. Then Rabbi Eliezer said, I'll tell you what, let a voice from heaven come, and let us all hear to say the law is like Rabbi Eliezer. And a voice from heaven came, and it said, the law is like Rabbi Eliezer. And Rabbi Yeshua said, Torah lo b'shamayim, the Torah is not in heaven. The Torah was given for mankind to live with and to change with, and therefore I have a right to change that law the way I see fit, and heaven has no right to high submission. My friends, the conservative movement believes, as does Rabbi Yeshua. Our Torah gives us expression of thought, gives us an idea how to think, but more so we believe that Yiftach B'doro K'Shmuel B'doro. Like Samuel was a great prophet in his generation, so was Yiftach in his generation. And there were great scholars and rabbis that thought this must not be done, that only the right shoe must be put on first and then the left shoe, and only this can be done and that can be done. With 100 years ago, and there were great scholars, so there are great scholars today in our modern age that feel changes can be made. You know, it reminds me of the story of a boy that was sitting in yeshiva, and he was studying one page of his Talmud, and the rabbi came by, and he looked at this page, and he asked him, where are you up to? And he told him, he showed him the points. He pointed to him what word he's up to. Rabbi smiled, wonderful, fine. 2 days later, the rabbi came by again, he sees the same boy on the same page. And he says, where are you up to? And he shows him the very same words. He says, what's the matter? You haven't learned anything in 2 days? He says, that's a good dog, was only game right up. The same thing it seems that some people think, if we're satisfied with what we have until now, why go further? The answer is, it's not true. Whenever there's a question of law, there are three possibilities. There's a possibility that one could say, no matter, who cares? Law is nothing. What went on then doesn't happen today. Well, there's another possibility. Nitnos Sefer V'Nemser. Let us open up the old book and see what that says. And whatever it says, whatever was good 200 years ago must be good today. And then there's a third possibility. We will open up the book and we will look, and we will not turn away from the reverence of the old. Yet we will see if it can be so interpreted as to fit this situation, the capabilities, the mental capacity, or the environment of a people today. If the essence of the law, if the tradition, if the ethical and moral teachings of the Torah is in place, why not change the minutiae? It must be to accomplish that essential. If you don't do that, you might lose everything. If we would say you may not get into your car to drive to synagogue on Shabbos, but stay home there, 100 years ago at Shabbos, they would light candles, and they would eat gefilte fish, and they would have challah, and they would sit and study. Today, I don't think you will do all that. And so the only part of Shabbos you have is to come to synagogue. And so the conservative movement says the essence of everything Sabbath means is more important than to get into your car. So get into your car and park in front of the synagogue. Sometimes I think the only difference between the Orthodox and the conservative is only 1 block away. They park a block away, and the conservative park in front. This is exactly what conservative movement is. The rabbis of old did this in their generation, and so these truths hold true even today. For an example, we have our prayers in English. I've seen some Orthodox, wonderful people, religious people, who say prayers in English. What's wrong with Shigasagus? Only in Hebrew. But we can open up the most Orthodox prayer book written about 600 years ago in Spain and see that their prayers are written in Spanish. There was no conservative Judaism then, not even Reform. Everything was Orthodox, yet their prayers are in Spanish. Our prayer books that were written 2,000 years ago. And we have a prayer when we open up our Torah. Vayhi ben Soah ha'aron, Berich Shemei, Be'anor Ochetz. This is not Hebrew. They're Hebrew letters, but it's Aramaic. Our Talmud is not Hebrew, but Aramaic. This was the language of the time, and this is what the people understood. And it is perfectly okay. I believe me that God understands English also. This, as in that time, was changed to Aramaic and to Spanish, so can we certainly have our prayers in English as well. But always, my friends, and this is important, for conservative Judaism emphasizes this, always with one thought in mind. We don't want to break away. The reverence for old tradition and historical law must remain, as long as it is applicable, as long as its deep meaning can exist in our modern society. It must remain, even if these traditions are only man-made. For instance, the wearing of a yarmulke, tradition of the Jew in the Talmud. It is man-made. In fact, the Kaddish, and someday I will give a sermon of the history of the Kaddish. The Kaddish is only a tradition made by Rabbi Akiva, that there is a prayer in the memorial of one who is dead. Man-made. But yet this wearing of the yarmulke, the saying of the Kaddish, as long as these things is reverence and tradition and has a moral essence attached to these customs, and it is applicable in our age, we dare not take it away. I give you this example that is going on right now among the rabbis of the seminary. And I was contacted for my opinion, so I'll give it to you first publicly. There is a question now that's going on between the law committees of the seminary of Yom Tov Sheni, the second days of Yom Tov. We know that we celebrate 2 days Passover, and then the last 2 days of Passover, 2 days Sukkot, and the last 2 days of Sukkot. Shavuos is 2 days, Rosh Hashanah 2 days. Why? Because there wasn't always a calendar in existence, and the only way we were able to tell what is indeed the correct day of the holiday was by witnesses of the moon. And so the rabbis, to be certain that we observe the holidays, declared it to be 2 days. Literally in Eretz Israel, in the land of Israel, there's only 1 day Pesach Seder, and 1 day at the end. Today we have 2 days. There are many rabbis who feel that we should abolish the second day of the holiday, because today we have calendars, and it may be hard to find a minyan on the second day, so let it make no holiday altogether on the second day. And some others say, we can't do that, let us proclaim that those who wish to abolish it, let them abolish it. Those who want to observe it, let them observe it. And this will altogether be a mishmash. Your rabbi feels that as long as this tradition has been going on, and it is not such a great sacrifice to have a second day and look for the minyan, it is indeed perhaps another day of coming to synagogue, but I do feel, even if it's only a tradition and only man-made, that this second 2 days should exist. And my friends, even if one may rationalize how a custom is unfit today, and there's many rationalizations and examples given, if it's tradition of the Jew, let him be here and let it remain. Conservative Judaism does not cut out any law. It is even lenient in any tradition simply because it wants to accommodate the masses. It only interprets it that if this thing can be applicable, it must. If not, we can't change. And we find quite often young men that say, and they are impatient with ritual, and they say, we are free today, so why do we have to have all this ritual? To these young men we can only say, like that story of the wolf, a wolf that was once caught in a trap, and the trapper came to free him. And he said, if you will free me, I will become like a dog to you, and I won't be a wolf anymore. And so the trapper freed him, and a few days later the wolf ran away. And when the trapper caught him again, he said, didn't you promise me that you won't be a wolf, but you'll start acting as a dog? And the wolf said, I cannot belong to anyone. The same thing these young men who claim about freedom without holding tradition, the answer is they can't belong to anything. And they try to rationalize. Our Midrash says something beautiful. I end with this. The Torah is compared to two paths. This is a medrash, Talmud, one of fire and one of ice. If a man turns to one, he will be burned. If he turns to the other, he will be frozen. What shall he do? Let him walk in the middle. This is one of the finest insights our tradition can offer us into our own position with regard to the past and the future. The true function of religion, my friends, is to combine a vast awareness of the past with a deep sense of the future. These Jews who want to return to the old-time religion will find a temporary escape, but no permanent refuge. Their children will pass them by. Those who ignore the past completely in their desire for modernity will find themselves restless and like their tumbleweed will roll off the plane of Judaism with the first blast of prejudice and challenge. We must maintain a steadfast loyalty towards our faith, but at the same time be willing to experiment and therefore permit the living waters of Judaism to flow surely and securely. In order for Judaism to live, it must follow between the frozen waves of static faith and the fires that destroy the values of the past. The old must be renewed, and the new must be made whole.